Are you looking to fine-tune? Whether for your business, your job, your team, or yourself. In each episode, we will be discussing different ideas and opinions using real-world examples to help you see opportunities, innovate, and succeed. Hi, it's Corby Fine, and welcome to Fine Tune. So with me today is a gentleman that I've had a couple of year virtual relationship with, someone that I met after I joined his new business venture online. It's an interesting business. We're going to talk a little bit about it today. But I also think not just beyond the business of what he does, I think the story of how he got to where he is also very interesting. My listeners, you know that my background is a little bit unique. I've done all kinds of things from selling Viagra to running a digital bank. I call myself a segment of one. Well, I think today I found another segment of one. So Joe Meyer is with me today. He is the founder and CEO of ExecThread, which is, well, I'll let him describe the business, but I like to say it's the secret to uncovering that unknown little thing called the retained search job market, where lots of people wish they were on the list, but really don't know often how to get on the list. And I think Joe's done a great job of bringing that to the forefront. So Joe, welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Corby.
Excellent. Joe, for full disclosure, is sitting in a non-air conditioned New Hampshire summer home and loving the heat, right? Is that the story?
Yeah, I'm on a 5-week road trip with my family to, socially distance in a more enjoyable way. So we rented our house out in New York and are visiting various New England states, going to different lakes and coastal towns, which is nice. But
awesome.
this particular lake house has no air conditioning, and I'm on the second floor, and I'm doing my best not to perspire here.
But you'll get this car climbed Mount Washington bumper sticker at the end of it all, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the podcast. When I think about your background, I look at your story through LinkedIn, and it's really interesting. You've gone from selling wine to consulting. You've worked for the eBays and the Apples of the world. You even had a little passion of mine in your experience where you worked for Upper Deck and as a kid who collected baseball cards. And I tell people all the time, the one time I stole something, and I'll admit it, was a pack of cards from the local variety store just for the gum with the powder on it. Yeah.
There you go.
So you go through all those experiences and you net out launching an online recruiting board. What's that story like?
It's really two things. One is following your gut and your heart and your instinct and not doing what everyone else is doing, and not, following the course, the road less traveled has always been kind of an approach I've pursued. I'm the youngest of 4 brothers, and, maybe 2 or 3 of my older brothers kind of went down the more traditional career path. And, I didn't necessarily sense a lot of fulfillment, I guess you would call it, from them taking that path. And maybe I learned from not their mistakes, but, their journey. And I just remember telling my older brother what my second job out of college was going to be, which was to go work at Upper Deck and leave Gallo Winery to do that. And he kind of just shrugged his head and thought it was a really bad decision. And I was like, you know what? A company that's fast growth is giving me a chance to manage a $30 million business at the age of 23, and I'll take it. I don't see any other big company giving me that opportunity, and I can go live in San Diego and work in the sports business and do something fast growth and entrepreneurial. Why not?
So a 23-year-old rookie of the year selling rookie of the year products. I love it.
Something like that. Yep.
So what led you to take a look at the space of recruitment? Obviously, over the last number of years, there's been this fairly substantial sort of trifurcation in the market, the way I've always looked at it. On one hand, you've got the complete self-serve ecosystem, which really has been dominated by LinkedIn, right? Post a job, find a job, post a job, find a job, rinse, repeat. On the other end, you've got the more managed service play. You've got the sort of mass market recruiting firms who specialize in either local areas or certain verticals. And then you've got this little thing called the executive search firm, the big glossy towers, the business suits, and the inability for the average employee or candidate to really know what goes on behind the walls. When you took a look at the space, what was it that said, there's a business here that I can disrupt?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of my choosing what to do next in my career revolves around what I've learned more recently in my most recent roles. ExecThread's a little bit different because I never thought I would go into the executive search space. And to be quite honest, ExecThread is not a recruiting firm. It's a platform, it's a community, it's a marketplace. And we're doing everything possible not to be a professional services firm. So to be quite honest, once I reached a certain point in my career, which was probably around a dozen years ago, and I started getting approached by executive search firms and executive recruiters, I always found it interesting insofar as how did they find me for this opportunity? What information did they have on me to, make them determine to reach out to me or to call me or to email me? Why do they think this is the right next opportunity for me? Oftentimes, 9 times out of 10, it wasn't the right next opportunity for me, which then led me from my eBay e-commerce days and my Quigo AOL ad tech days and my HopStop Apple days of location-based services where everything is based on targeting messaging to you based on data we have on you, the end user. And I quickly found out that executive recruiters really don't have a lot of data, if any, on me, the candidate. They have my LinkedIn profile. If they're lucky, they might have a resume on me. And if they do, it's probably 10 years old since I haven't created a resume in, over a decade. And, targeting things to me based on my LinkedIn profile is so problematic for any number of reasons. One, it's self created, self reported. Two, it's historical. It's not forward looking. Three, it can be embellished. Four, it can be incomplete. Five, you don't update it very often. Six, it's prone to biases, etc. So I just thought, what, there's got to be a better way of targeting these jobs to candidates, but I didn't really know how to solve that problem. I knew it would be a data challenge. We've largely solved that problem at this point, 5 years later. But the real impetus behind why we started ExecThread is I was at Apple by way of an acquisition, and I committed to being there for a year. And as I was approaching my year mark, I actually started looking around for what I would do next. I ideally wanted to go start a company. I didn't have an idea I was excited enough about to do that for. So I actually started a lightweight job search, and it was the first time I had, been in a job search in, I don't know, again, 10 years. But I knew what it involved and it entailed, and I just found it excruciatingly inefficient and painful and unenjoyable. And a large part of that is because the vast majority of the job opportunities that you want to pursue are not publicly posted. They're confidential job opportunities worked on by retained search firms. And the only chance you have of finding out about them is if you're approached by the recruiter or if someone in your network tells you about it. And the chances of that happening are pretty slim. And even if you are, fairly well pursued by executive recruiters, as I think I was back in those Apple days, you're only finding out about a sliver, like a microscopic sliver of the opportunities out there. So I just thought there has to be a better way. There has to be a better way to bring more transparency to these opportunities. And I immediately thought, you know what? I'd be willing to share the job opportunities coming across my desk that I'm not pursuing if someone that I consider to be a peer was willing to do the same. So I just started that out as a kind of an experiment with around 50 people in my network and just started out with Gmail and a spreadsheet. And that was the genesis of ExecThread. And it grew from there.
So something about that model seems so obvious and simple, but at the same time, the word scarcity comes to mind. And
Hmm.
when people are, especially in a time like now, really going through a lot of transition, obviously there's a lot of job loss right now. And while there is still a lot of opportunity in terms of net new career moves, there's a lot more competition. So how do you think through the word scarcity? I've always said, I love my barber. I love my personal trainer. God forbid I should ever tell anybody about them because the more people that want to use them, the less opportunity I'm going to have.
Yeah.
How do you combat that as a barrier in your business?
Yeah. I mean, first off, I'll say anyone who hoards opportunities for themselves and isn't a believer in the give to get model and isn't a believer in paying it forward and isn't a believer in helping other people and, things coming full circle, that might benefit those people in the short term or in the near term, but I think in the long term, it'll catch up to them. And ExecThread's really all based on paying it forward and giving to get and helping your peers so that they in turn help you. And it's not like Joe Meyer is an ExecThread member and he's helping Corby only. Joe Meyer as an ExecThread member who's contributing and sharing opportunities is helping all ExecThread members. and vice versa. We're throwing our respective opportunities into a clearinghouse, and then that clearinghouse is figuring out how to intelligently disseminate them to the appropriate and correct members based on the preferences of those members, the affinities of those members, the engagement and behaviors of those members, and based on data targeting, which is something we're very strong at that executive recruiters really aren't. So to answer your question, by sharing, you get more access. You not only help your peers, but you help yourself. And then you leave it up to the technology company and the data science company to figure out how to put those right opportunities in front of the right person.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the model, and I said my barber, not my job opportunities. So don't
There you go.
pigeonhole me like that.
Like I said, it wasn't directed at you.
And I think, for myself, having engaged with you on LinkedIn in a more personal manner as well outside of the platform, I do see a lot of sharing of the information. It's really great. I don't know how many people I've recommended personally, but it's been a bunch. But one of the features I really do like as well is the vetting. And so, in
Yeah,
fact, today I went back in, and as a member, I have the opportunity to look at other applicants to the platform and say, are they the right kind of candidate that an executive recruiter would be interested in knowing about in the market? Do they have
yeah,
the right pedigree? Are they on the right path? Do they have
yep,
growth opportunities? How does that piece work, and where does that fit in between the human vetted and then the
yep,
data science side?
yeah. So when I started ExecThread, and it's a venture-backed startup, and obviously venture capitalists want to look at big market opportunities. And one of the pushbacks I received when I was initially fundraising for ExecThread from VCs was, what, we love the model, we love the approach, we love the angle you're taking, we love the early traction, and we love the fact that it's curated and vetted. But how do you scale that? How do you scale something that's curated and vetted? To be quite honest, I didn't know at the time, and that's why I said, give me money and I'll figure it out. But I knew we needed to be more scalable. I knew we needed to do things in a more automated way. And I knew we also needed to do things in a more unbiased, objective way. So for example, when an executive recruiter is vetting talent, they're looking at resumes and LinkedIn profiles with their human eyes. That's not scalable, and it's definitely not unbiased. So, I come from a pure technology and digital background and a data background. So we knew we needed to keep the network vetted and curated because, you know, what high caliber professionals going to want to be a part of a network that is, sharing such opportunities, but the quality is not there. The quality needs to be there. So we developed software that enables us to build and create profiles on any person who wants to join ExecThread in a split second with just your name and your email address. We build that profile in seconds. We also created rules and algorithms to tell us, exactly how to evaluate that profile and rank and score it. But that's imperfect as well, right? It's really reliant upon the amount of data we can collect on you. So what we do is we complement that more automated scientific way of evaluating talent. And by the way, that automated scientific way of evaluating talent is not looking at headshots. It's not looking at skin color. It's not looking at if you're a male or a female. It's not looking at if you're gay or straight. It's not looking at any of the ways that, a traditional evaluator of talent can bias their opinion. It's looking at it purely by your accomplishments and your career progression. In any event, we knew we needed to complement it with a human touch, but we ourselves are not recruiters. And any one person on our team is not going to be able to evaluate talent scalably because that would be the traditional recruiting model. So we said, you know what? We're building a community of some of the best talented professionals in the world. They are hiring managers themselves. Let them evaluate the talent for us. So we created a system called peer review that enables us to put what we call applicants, i.e., professionals that want to join ExecThread, in front of our own members in an automated self-serve way. Give our members some loose rules as to how to potentially evaluate that talent, not strict rules. And we leave it up to the discretion of ExecThread members to, vote up or vote down. But we don't rely on one vote only to make that decision. We are putting that profile in front of many ExecThread members, and there's a bunch of science and rules based engine that determines how many yays versus nays that you get that gets you in the network. Or we also throw away votes. So, for example, I received an email from an ExecThread member today, and he said, I peer reviewed, I evaluated 14 applicants and I voted thumbs down on all of them. And so, so we account for that and we will treat that evaluator as an outlier and we will discount his vote because he's on the edge.
Got it. Yeah, the throw at the top, throw at the bottom, go for the middle. It's sort of like Olympic subjective judging, but you kind of need to do that to play fair.
Correct. Yes.
So let's talk about the size of this then for a second. You said earlier, venture backed. Obviously, investors look for a big market, a big prize.
Yep.
When you take a look at this secrets market of retained search, how many do you think are actively live at any one point? When you think about the U.S. market, how many retained searches are going on at any one point?
So I will say that it's far bigger than you would ever think. The official market research, according to the analysts will tell you it's around a 12 to $15 billion industry. We think it's around 3 to 4 times that size, so around 40 to 50 billion. Last time I checked, that's a pretty big market. We've crowdsourced over 15,000 or close to 15,000 retained searches at this point, which is not a small number. I think that represents low single digits of the total available market. There is an incredibly long tail of executive search firms out there. For example, what you said earlier, Corby, I've heard a trillion times before. Well, maybe not a trillion, but 1,000 times before. I.e., I know a lot of search, professionals in my function or in my market. You might think you do, but you know very, very few versus the total universe. There's no barriers to entry in the executive search market. It's not like to become an executive recruiter, you have to take a test like a real estate agent. I could hang up a shingle tomorrow and call myself Joe Meyer recruiting firm. There are hundreds of thousands of executive search firms out there, from small 1 or 2 man boutiques all the way up to the Russell Reynolds of the world, and everything in between. So it's a very large market, but it's unknown. Not many people have spent much time, trying to figure out this market, and I feel like we're one of the few.
And so when you pull your members, what is it about the platform that they really like? They thank you for? What is it the benefit that you're bringing to them?
So it's an interesting question. It's kind of like when I was running Hopstop, which was the startup before this, which created a multimodal pedestrian navigation transit routing app that was acquired by Apple. It was highly popular and we received a ton of feedback from our members, our users, but we received just as much negative feedback as positive, if not more negative. And actually, the negative feedback is more helpful than the positive. When you build a network of now 50,000 plus high caliber professionals like we have, all of those folks are very smart, opinionated, think they're right sort of professionals, and they will share their thoughts with you and tell you what they think you're doing right or wrong, oftentimes what they think you're doing wrong. So I value that feedback, but it also keeps me awake at night. But, I heard a long time ago, if your users didn't care about your service, they wouldn't share their thoughts on it. Our members definitely share their thoughts on our service. Keeps us on our toes,
I, I,
including you, Corby.
I was going to say I might have been guilty once or twice of doing
Yeah.
that, but I've helped a lot too, both ways.
Yes,
So
you have.
I'm a big listen. Personally, I'm a big fan of the platform, and part of the reason I wanted you on today was so that I could expose it to my network. So talk about the sign up process. Maybe help my listeners know how to get involved.
Yeah. Sign up process is super easy, to be quite honest. That gets approved. It's free to join the network. To apply or to sign up, I should say, all you need to do is give us your first and last name and your email address. Validate that you own that email address via a verification email that you need to reply to. With that information, we can pull a lot of information on you based on your background. And through that vetting process that I described earlier, which is a mixture of art and science, we'll let you know if you're invited into the network. If you're not rejected. You're just simply deferred for 6 months, and then we'll reevaluate you in 6 months because we know a lot of people are progressing in their career, always progressing. And some of the process is subjective as to whether you get in. So we'll put you in front of new peer reviewers as well. But it's simple as just giving us your name and email address. We don't ask you to build a profile. We don't ask you to send us a resume. We don't ask you to create a profile, update that profile. People are busy; they don't have time for that. But we know who you are when you apply, and then we'll expose you to thousands upon thousands of confidential searches.
If only the dating sites were as simple as that. The peer review dating site, I'm sure it's
Yes,
coming next.
yes, exactly.
And then I'd say, tell them Corby sent you so that you can get in front of me as a peer reviewer because I'm actually pretty good. I've only rejected a couple, but I think that's because you do such a good job of actually attracting really the demographic that you're trying to attract, which is the professional, the executive, or at least the
Yeah,
person who's on the cusp of sort of moving their career in that path.
yeah. I mean, we get asked that question a lot, which is what percent of applicants do you defer or not approve? I'm not going to give you the exact percentage, but I will say this, if Stanford only accepts 5 or 6% of their applicants, we actually accept and approve the majority of our applicants, mainly because there's a lot of self-selection at the top of our funnel. So, when you go to our site and you see CEO jobs and COO jobs and CRO jobs and CMO jobs and VP of jobs and SVP of that jobs, if you're a recent graduate, you're not going to join that network. If you're a barista at Starbucks, not that there's anything wrong with that, you're not going to, it's not a good fit for you. So there's a lot of self-selection in terms of who tries to sign up. And then plus, we rely on referrals from our members quite a bit. And, I think the majority of ExecThread members like you, Corby, realize that it's important to keep the quality of this network high. And you probably put it through your own quality funnel of who you invite and who you don't. And therefore, we approve anyone who gets referred to us by an ExecThread member instantaneously, automatically.
It's a great service, and for anyone who is currently in a situation of looking, being displaced, and or just wants to make sure that they're exposed to all of these, I highly recommend it. And send me a note on the side, and I'll refer you. That way, you can maybe get in a little faster. But
Exactly.
listen,
And you brought up a good point, which is it's a service that not only benefits the active job seeker, and obviously there's a lot of active job seekers now with, at least here in the US, 45 million-ish people unemployed, and that goes all the way up to the top of the food chain. I'm sure unemployment rates in Canada are, pretty similar. But ExecThread's a great service, even if you're not actively looking and you want to just keep your finger on the pulse of the market. If you want to be opportunistic, if you're a tire kicker, if you want to kind of be reactive, if you're gainfully employed, but you want to just kind of see what else is out there, it meets and hits all those use cases.
well, Joe, I look forward to my Friday updates with your personal little
There you go.
twang on it. And I will say the things that you write about are very topical: bias-free recruiting, gender neutrality, Black Lives Matter. I'd say you're very much on top. And as a customer of your platform, I do appreciate that.
So 48 or 49% of the ExecThread network are underrepresented professionals. If you compare that to the percent of underrepresented professionals at the executive level in North America today, we're over indexing by a good 2.5 to 3x. In a world where 80% of the executives are white men, you know, you have a vetted, curated, talented network like ExecThread where 50% are underrepresented professionals, whether it be women, people of color, LGBTQ plus. And the fact that we didn't do that intentionally, you're looking at me, I'm a white male myself. I didn't build this network intentionally to either appeal to one demographic or another, or only for one demographic or another, like many other platforms do. But I firmly believe that the value prop of providing, if you're an ExecThread member, you get far more efficient, faster, quicker access to the best jobs in the world. That value prop disproportionately, I think, appeals to and benefits underrepresented professionals more than not, because in a world where you rely on who you know to find out about the opportunity, who does that benefit the most? It benefits the 8 out of 10 who are in that position of power, who are not underrepresented. Whereas with ExecThread, if you're a member, everyone has equal access to the best jobs.
It's a very strong, very, very, very strong and compelling reason to become part of the ecosystem.
Yeah,
And I'm glad it worked out that way. I'm also glad that you decided to take that second job and set your path to work for a bit of a passion project, Upper Deck, and really follow your heart, follow your own path, and it's led you here. It's led me and many, many, many others, 50,000 of us, to become part of your ecosystem. And hopefully at the end of this, we're going to get everybody listening to sign up as well. So, Joe,
appreciate
on
it.
behalf of the listeners, thank you for being with me today. Again, it's execthread.com, and look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you, Corby.
Thanks, Joe. You've been listening to Fine Tune. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can connect with me on Twitter at CFine, through LinkedIn at Corby Fine, or visit my website, corbyfine.com. Fine Tune is produced by me, Corby Fine. Thanks for listening.